powerful relationship and powerful outcome and result from that. I remember when Holy Geshe Michael was here teaching the other month, he must have said, I think he said at least 3 times when he was up on the stage, I can't tell you how frustrating it is to come here year after year after year and teach the same thing and not have people do it. Right? It's like that. Right? I was speaking with Venerable Jimpa the other day, and he's been in retreat for like 8 years or something, and he's like, I don't teach much. He says, you sit down with people one-on-one and you teach them and you tell them very specifically what they should do. You give them all the instructions and you take all the time, and then they don't do it. So it's a very delicate and important relationship, Leave it at that. So secondly, one has to be studying a lot intellectually. One has to be studying emptiness intellectually. Over and over again, attending a lot of classes. If one doesn't hear these ideas explained well and regularly, one really won't get it. This progression of collecting causes, we talk about the 5 paths, just as an aside, we talk about the 5 paths. Path of preparation, right? Remember all that? You have to first spend a lot of time preparing to see emptiness, which is classroom hours and intellectual study. If we don't understand what it is, if we can't loosen our grasp on this reality, to start to attenuate the mind to another level of reality, to start to familiarize the mind with another level of reality, how is the mind going to stop engaging this level of reality and start engaging another level of reality, Is there some magic switch that all of a sudden gets flipped and we pop over here from the white box to the blue box? I don't think so. It's this progress. It's this progression of training the mind over and over and over again to stop perceiving a certain way, and to prepare the mind to be able to perceive a different way. And we talk about it. We have to talk about it. It's this training of that doesn't really exist from its own side. That is not a self-existent thing. And my perceptions are not absolute. It's all, anything can be anything. It's all relative, isn't it? It's all a function of the perceiver. And we don't go through life that way. We don't go through life thinking, you know what, if my senses were functioning a little differently, or my mind was functioning a little differently, I'd have a completely different experience of this, and I might not even be perceiving it at all. We just don't live that way. We think everything is concrete, everything is there, everything is definitively happening, and we'll talk about it. Okay. So the second point is studying emptiness intellectually in great depth over and over and over again. Right? Classroom hours, time with the teacher. Thirdly, meditating deeply. If one is not meditating deeply, one cannot perceive ultimate reality. We don't perceive ultimate reality with our senses or our faculties, our sensory faculties associated with this body. And we're not going to use our eyeballs or our ears or our touch or anything else to perceive ultimate reality. Okay? We use our mind to perceive ultimate reality, and the mind has to be trained to be very still and very precise and very subtle and very clean to be able to penetrate into another level of reality. And a mind which is just turbulent and jumping around and can't be still and can barely let go of thoughts is certainly not prepared to perceive a completely subtle, pure, ultimate level of reality. Right? So you've got to be meditating over and over, like an hour or two a day, to be able to get into the deep state of meditation required to perceive emptiness. Right? So then one has to have instructions on the nature of mental imaging, Chi-Chedrak. We studied it in course 6, perhaps. I don't know, 5. One has to receive instructions on how is it that the mind conceptualizes all of reality? How is it that the mind creates all the identities and ideas and categories that it does? How does the mind take all of existence and pigeonhole everything into categories and concepts? Right? This is the study of Chi-Chedrak and the instruction of Chi-Chedrak. So one has to have that instruction also to have a direct understanding of ultimate reality or direct perception of ultimate reality. So when one has those things, and when one is doing those things, if one is serving the teacher and building up that incredible virtuous energy, mental capacity, very still subtle focused mental capacity, meditating, and a deep intellectual understanding of the nature of reality, then one begins to have realizations of subtle impermanence, and one begins to start to have profound spiritual realizations in the time leading up to the direct perception of emptiness, especially around the nature of impermanence. So, and that goes on a lot. So then at some point, the karma is triggered where one starts to move towards the direct perception of ultimate reality. And right before that, one has the highest experience one can have in this reality, which is a direct perception of dependent origination, of deceptive truth, deceptive reality. One sees directly for the first time in countless lifetimes, zillions of lifetimes, one perceives directly how their mind is imaging data into concepts and images and reality. That's my daughter, sorry. My wife's out of town, so got the babysitter. She says, "Come home, Dad, I miss you." Okay, well, we'll send her some love, right?
Yeah. Class is over.
I'm trying not to image that.
That's the
Okay. So, how does that work? You know, you've collected all these causes. You know, you have something, you have an object, right? And you look at it, and for the first time, you realize that there's not a mug there. Like, I see colors and shapes, and I see my mind assembling those colors and shapes into an identity and into an image, and imputing that into an object and a reality, right? What can the eye perceive? Colors and shapes. Is it possible for my eyeball to see a cup?
If you wish to label it a cup.
No, the eyeball. My eyeball. No, eyeball's not capable of seeing a cup, right? Eyeball can only see photons of light, or whatever you want to call it, right? Colors, shapes, textures, I don't know. However you want to describe that. Right? The mind takes that information, you know, electrical impulses, movement of cells, whatever you want to call it, and somehow translates that into a cup of tea, right? So the mind is imaging and creating the object which is there, right? And so my fingers feel hardness and shape, right? And my mind integrates shape and hardness with color, right? And all of that gets assembled by my mind into a teacup. There is no teacup here. Teacup doesn't exist here. Where does the teacup exist? It's a function of my mind. It exists in dependence upon my mind. There is no teacup out there on its own, independent of my mind putting that data together into a teacup. Right? So one perceives that directly for the first time ever. Not in an intellectual way, but in a direct experiential way. One realizes that one is seeing the image that one's mind is creating. One is saying, I know there's no teacup there. I don't see a teacup. I see a color, I see a shape, I feel a hardness, and I see my mind putting all that together into a little picture in my mind. And I think there's a teacup out there. So that's a direct experience of deceptive reality. right? The mind decides what's going on, and it organizes it all, right? It makes the picture, and you realize, I realize I'm not looking at a teacup. I'm just looking at a picture in my mind. Right? Like, where does broccoli come from? Like, where does broccoli come from? Not the ground. Hell, no.
Just an image in my mind.
All right, this is in a conventional way, please. All right? Just conventional reality, please.
Italy?
Italy. That's broccoli it out. Sorry. Okay.
Broccoli.
Let me be more specific because I'm very precise. Okay? When you put a piece of broccoli in your mouth and chew it, what do you taste? Do you taste broccoli? Yes. Yeah.
Of course.
Now you say, "Oh, I'm eating broccoli tonight." It's hell, right, or whatever, or delicious. There's your proof right there, right? But is the tongue capable of tasting broccoli?
No.
What can the tongue taste?
I thought it was.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think it's 3 or 5 tastes.
Six.
Salty, sweet, sour, whatever.
But it's
Yeah, put a
savory.
new one in.
Sweet, sour, salty.
Tongue is not capable of tasting broccoli. We're eating broccoli. How did we get broccoli? Where'd the broccoli come from? Right? So, there was some smell, olfactory thing going on. There was some color thing going on. There are all these bits which were coming in through the senses, right? And the mind said, that's broccoli. Now, could you sit there and say, that's not broccoli, that's a grape? It doesn't work, right? Why? Because you're being forced to perceive it that way, because your senses and your mind function that way and that way alone. And it's forced upon you by your past karma, right? So, one realizes that they're watching a perfect tiny little picture that the mind is creating. And that's a direct perception of a direct experience of dependent origination, deceptive reality, deceptive truth, the first truth. So one has a direct perception of the first truth, right? Deceptive truth, and the nature of the deceptive truth for the first time in millions of lives, and realizes everything is like that. My body, New York City, my job, my partner, it's all exactly the same. They're not out there. They don't exist out there from their own side. I've got all these little pictures that my mind is making, right? And I'm imputing them onto everything, and that's my reality. So one has that experience directly for the first time in the lead-on to the direct experience of ultimate reality. That's not the direct experience of ultimate reality. That's the direct experience of deceptive reality, right? Okay. We just saw deceptive truth as being deceptive for the first time, and it's a big threshold. It's a peak moment before one crosses into seeing emptiness directly. Okay? Seeing deceptive reality as being deceptive. So all those other conditions have to be there. Big time virtue has to be there. Incredibly powerful karma has to be there. And then all of that crescendos into the direct experience of deceptive reality. And based upon that, one sits down in meditation, goes into a deep state of meditation, and the mind is in deep single-pointed concentration, shamatha. The senses are withdrawn. One is not engaged in any of the ordinary senses of the body. Those are all withdrawn. And because of all those circumstances and conditions, one then has a direct experience of emptiness or ultimate reality. So then what is that like? It's a state free of conception. One is not able to be aware of oneself. Why?
There's no self.
She said, "Come home, Dad." Thank you so much. I love you, Dad. I'll be, okay. Could go on for a while. Just leave it at that. So when one is in the direct experience of ultimate reality, it's not possible to be aware of anything else except ultimate reality. It's a direct communion with that level of reality. There are no conceptual thoughts. There are no mental elaborations. Right? There is no sense of, oh, I'm seeing ultimate reality. Isn't this cool? Because that's conceptual elaboration. And there's no I, because I'm a conceptual elaboration. right? So it's a direct experience and a direct communing with this other level of reality, right? When one comes out of that experience, you don't know how long you're in it because you're not thinking about time. Time is a relative conceptual thing, which isn't happening there. So when one comes out of the direct experience of ultimate reality, you don't know how long you're in it, but you can obviously look at the clock afterwards because you're back in this deceptive conventional reality, right? And I mean, people always say, I just bleeped over, I don't know if you noticed, I just bleeped over the description of what it's like to be in ultimate reality, right? Many, many texts, especially the higher texts, say, state where nothing is known and no one knows. It's beyond all words and thoughts and descriptions. And so anytime one of the holy texts talks about ultimate reality and emptiness, only talks about it in those terms. Because how could you describe a state free of projection and conception and mental elaboration with those things? Very tricky and difficult. Impossible, in fact. Not just tricky and difficult, impossible, right? So it's not something which can be written about accurately. It's not something which can be described with our language and our conceptualizations. They're not up to the task, basically, right? So, say within an hour at the beginning of this process, might take an hour to go through the whole thing. At the beginning of this process, one has a direct experience of deceptive reality. And then at the tail end of this process, one has a direct experience of ultimate reality. And so in that hour-long period, one experiences the two truths, right? And following on then from that come the 4 Arya truths and the 16 subdivisions of those things and many, many, many other realizations and profound spiritual events. So once one has this experience, one gains the capacity to eliminate all of one's suffering forever. Last week I said it's kind of like when you're exposed to radiation. It changes you irreversibly, in a bad way. I don't know what the proper metaphor would be in a positive sense. We don't really have one, But it's like, the anti-radiation, where you have exposure to this thing, it changes you irreversibly in a positive way, so that you can only get better and better and better and better to the ultimate state of being better, So it's a very powerful, profound experience where you have the power to remove all of your mental afflictions. You'll never be angry again. You'll never be jealous again. You'll put an end to all of your mental afflictions as a result of having this experience. And if you're on the Bodhisattva track, you'll have the direct experience of bodhicitta also. So you'll enter the first Bodhisattva bhumi, which is experiencing emptiness with bodhicitta in your heart. So one attains that also. And you see your future enlightenment. I mean, when after you've had this direct experience of emptiness, and you talk to other spiritual practitioners, and they say, "Oh, here's my theory, and here's another philosophy, and there's another book, and here's this school of Buddhism, and here's that school of Buddhism." It's kind of all much of a muchness, right? I mean, you met the Dharmakaya, you met Dharmakaya of a Buddha directly. You've seen your future enlightenment. You've seen your future lives. You know for a fact how you're going to spend the rest of your lives before you're enlightened, serving other people, serving other beings, and serving the Dharma. So there's really not much that's going to bother you or upset you, given that all of this is a definitive fact for you. So who's gonna say much to upset you when you know that in this many lives you're in paradise forever? I mean, yeah, maybe you get fired. It's kind of small in the scheme of things, right? So, at that point, after you have the direct experience of ultimate reality, you're called a stream enterer. And you understand directly at that moment the entire content of all the scriptures. Something like 200,000 Tibetan scriptures. And you understand all their contents in that moment. And so, from then on, you're golden. basically. They use a few different words to describe that kind of person. Please, I don't know if you can read it. Please say Tongni,
Tongni,
Nung Sum Du,
Nung Sum Du,
To,
To,
Nyong.
Nyong.
So Tongni means emptiness, Nung Sum Du means directly, Tok is realized, and Nyong is has done it, someone who's done it. Right? So, excuse me. This is a person who has undergone the direct perception of emptiness. This is the first kind of person called a Pakpa, or Arya. Pakpa in Tibetan, Arya in Sanskrit, superior being. Not superior in an Aryan, Hitlerian sense, in a higher being spiritually and from a virtuous perspective. Some people think that when you see emptiness, all of a sudden life is wonderful and you never have any more problems. And I think it's a common misconception. I know it was for me for a while. It's like, look, if you have this great spiritual realization, it's not my daughter. Maybe somebody calling in a complaint, I don't know.
No, it sounded like a spiritual realization.
I hear the harvest.
Not that easy.
Yeah, if only, right? Or you can put on the soundtrack, just kick back and. Oh man. So, I think there can be some confusion about what happens when a person experiences emptiness and becomes an Arya. It's like, well, why'd they get fired? Why'd they break their leg? Why'd they get cancer? Or whatever it might be, right? So, what does having a direct experience of ultimate reality put it into? Anything? Does it put it into anything?
Doubt.
What's an end to your doubt in that you've seen an enlightened being, you've seen your own enlightenment, you've seen your future lives? It completely ends any doubt you have about your spiritual path, right? There's no question in your mind. You have the prominent, the valid perception that this is it, this is absolutely factually true, and this is what's going to happen, and there's no question at all in my mind about anything now in that regard, right? And then, when you come out of direct experience of ultimate reality, you see the true nature of reality, right? You come out of that experience, you finish your meditation session, and you come out, what do you see? Is everything all of a sudden, are you seeing auras all of a sudden? Do you see who's got a blue aura, and who's got a gold aura, and who's got a red aura? And then you know? Or what?
Mm-hmm.
Back here.
Yeah, it's just schmucky conventional reality, right? Unfortunately. You're back to ordinary deceptive reality, right? But what's changed?
You don't believe it?
Yeah, you know it's not true. You no longer believe that this level of reality is it. Like ordinary human beings, we go through our lives thinking, this is it, dude. This is all there is, And, you tell me there's another level of reality. I've never seen it. This is the only level of reality I know. I mean, yeah, I can see dogs and, bugs and whatever. You tell me there's other realms, I don't see them. And that's true. So, for the ordinary people, this is the only reality, and conventional appearances are it. So that, when one comes out of the direct experience of ultimate reality and is back to this level of reality, they know there's other reality, because they've been there, right? And they stop believing that this reality is the reality, and the only reality, and the reality to believe in, and the reality to live by. Because that's our problem, isn't it? I mean, the root of our problem is that this is the only reality we know. The laws of this reality are, I shall restrain myself, messed up, right? The laws of this reality say, abuse the shit out of people and you'll get ahead. Steal from somebody and you'll have more. Be stronger, more powerful, and more mean and nasty than somebody else. And you'll get ahead in your life, and you'll be happy and successful in your life. People who are nice to others are losers and weak. People who are generous and soft and kind and loving, they just get trumped on and they fail. So, I mean, there are all these twisted ideas that we live by in this reality, which we take to be true. And I mean, not even to go into the media programming us to think if only you buy the quadruple blade razor, you'll be happy forever. I mean, it's just this bizarre realm that we live in, right? If only you shave your legs this way, you'll be so happy. I mean, it's just bizarre, right? I mean, this is our reality, right? It's how we live, and we're often not even aware of it, right? So, what was I talking about? I got sidetracked on this razors.
Arias.
Sorry?
Arias. You're talking about Arias.
Arias, all right.
What you see when you come out of emptiness.
And how you're stuck in the conventional reality.
Yeah, so you see this level of reality. And so if somebody says to you, look, the sky's really pink, dude. You're like, thank you very much. You've seen it. I know it's blue, not pink, okay? So this doubt about how to behave is gone. Questioning about your spiritual path is gone. We see this level of reality. We live in this level of reality. And unfortunately, our habituation is so strong that we can't stop living in alignment with this level of reality. It says, buy the quadruple razor and you'll be happy, and we're still buying the quadruple razors. Or lie to somebody and you get money, so we're still lying to somebody to get money. But we know that it's wrong, and we know that we're causing our own suffering and our own poverty and all the rest, and that we know it factually for sure. So there's this process of re-habituating ourselves and reconditioning ourselves to live in alignment with ultimate reality rather than this level of reality, which is messed up. Okay? So, we know that every single perception we have all day long is wrong, but we can't stop it. In time we can, but not initially when you first come out of the experience. So the third thing is that we know for a fact that silly religious practices where we would hurt ourselves are completely wrong. Doing some kind of spiritual practice which would end where we would hurt ourselves are completely wrong. To think, well, to attain some spiritual goal, I'll just sit here until my knees hurt and I can't walk anymore. I mean, we realize that that's just crazy behavior. Or if I starve myself for 30 days straight, I'll have visions and I'll get a realization or something. So we recognize that all these kinds of practices are really crazy. So those are the only three things that we get rid of permanently. We still have the other 83,997 afflictions, whatever it is, to work through. But that experience of ultimate reality is the basis for changing our behavior to get rid of all the other afflictions, to eliminate all the other mental afflictions, right? So how does a person who's seen emptiness directly handle their mental afflictions? What do you do with it, right? I mean, you lie to somebody and you go, oh shit, I'm so stupid. I'm like crazy for doing that. And then you stop yourself next time. And it's like that with everything. So that's why the direct experience of emptiness does not make you a happy camper instantaneously, because we still carry all of our past negative karma to deal with. And we're still collecting new negative karma, albeit at a much lighter level, which isn't going to ripen into any kind of heavy suffering for us, because we don't have that ignorance anymore to trigger it in a big way. So someone who's seen emptiness is going to spend the rest of their life and few remaining lives re-habituating themselves to live in alignment with ultimate reality rather than deceptive reality. And obviously the more one does that, the easier it becomes. The more one is communing directly with ultimate reality, the easier that becomes. I mean, it's like hanging out in Tahoe versus hanging out here. It's like it's a lot easier when you're in a conducive environment to just relax and let your mind go. I don't know what you do in Tahoe. Bad example. Never mind. All right. So there are only two kinds of people in the world. The first is the pakpa. What's the other kind?
Ordinary
Schmucks. Right? Tibetan, sorry, I'll give you the Tibetan. Soso-kewa, which is like so-so people, ordinary people, right? Children, infants. So-so means ordinary, kewa is person. Someone who's not seen emptiness directly. Jippa in Tibetan. And so, these are people, they're like children in the scriptures. It's like these people are just children. They only know as much as children. They have the knowledge of a child. They don't understand. It's like a kid, Kids don't have a clue. They'll just run out in the street. They don't have a clue. They do. And then we're the same way. We don't have a clue. We just go off and lie and cheat and steal. we're oblivious that we're going to get smashed, a few moments later as a result of doing it, just like kids running out in the street in front of cars, karmically. So, obviously these two classes of people are completely different from each other, utterly different. Common people or regular people are in predominance. The entire universe, all beings in existence, are divided into these two categories, regardless of the realms or anything else. You're either an Arya or you're a non-Arya, right? So, to experience emptiness, you have to be in a deep state of meditation in a certain level of the first level of the form realm, and it's impossible to perceive emptiness in any other condition. People say, well, I was meditating for a few minutes and I got really deep and I saw it. And it's not like that. One actually has an experience of being in another realm when one is perceiving ultimate reality, and it's very clear. Okay. Please say Tony, Num Sumdu, Tokma, Nyong. Again, Tony is emptiness. Nung Sumdu is directly. Tok is realize. Ma is not. And Nyong is has done it. So that's a description of an Arya, someone who has undergone the direct experience of emptiness.
Who is not?
Who is not. Whoops, that's the description of an ordinary person. Yeah. Thank you. Someone who has not undergone. Thank you. There's a negative in there. So, in the beginning, an Arya is called a stream enter. When one first perceives ultimate reality, one's called a stream enter. And then as one progresses through their Arya career, move beyond that to other stages as you move towards nirvana. So you have to be collecting powerful virtue in a very sincere way. You have to be learning about emptiness. Your most powerful karmic object is a spiritual teacher, and it's taught throughout Buddhism and all the scriptures. It's the most powerful karmic object is a spiritual teacher. They have the potential to benefit many sentient beings, in an ultimate way. And it's a little suspicious to have the scriptures and spiritual teachers saying that I'm the most powerful karmic object and fly me, serve me, give me everything that I want. But it isn't like that. It's not with money or flowers or anything else. A spiritual teacher doesn't need any of those things in a material sense. It's with your life and with your practice. A spiritual teacher wants you to develop compassion, to be virtuous, and to be a pure and holy being. And so that's true service of a spiritual teacher, and that's a true offering to a spiritual teacher. They want you to see emptiness directly, and your virtuous living and your practice is the highest offering, right? So you have to offer them that. You have to offer them your life. What does it mean you have to offer them your life? Right? Say, I'll be your slave forever. I'll clean out your storage space. I'll cook all your meals. I'll whatever, right? Give you all my salary. It's not like that. To achieve the goals that we're talking about takes your life and your life's effort. We've talked about it from many angles over the past dozen courses. These things don't happen without effort. It isn't going to happen from a few minutes of effort here and a few minutes of effort there. Maybe I got 5 minutes this week, maybe I got an hour next week, maybe if I'm lucky I'll get 4 or 5 hours in any given week. It's not going to work. You're not going to perceive ultimate reality and become enlightened in this life with that kind of commitment. Probably. I think. So, giving your life to your teacher means giving your life to your practice and saying, every free moment, every spare moment, I'm going to dedicate to this goal, and this path, and this practice for myself, and in service of the teacher and the teaching, but in recognition of the fact that it's only going to happen if we give it a full-on effort. So to collect the virtue that we need, to learn what we need to learn intellectually, to develop the mental capacity which we must develop, all of those things, in my opinion, will only happen if one fully devotes and dedicates one's life to them. And if you're going to do that, do it with a teacher who can instruct you every step of the way, right? Collect the karma along the way and receive the specific guidance that one requires, right? Okay. So, they also call them, please say, surtong.
Surtong.
Sur means near, like the near side of this river, or tong means to see. It's another name for ordinary people. It's nearsighted, people who only see things on this side. It's like if you're talking about this side versus the other, this side of reality, that side of reality, this side of the river, that side of the river. It's like people who can only see this side. They can't see past this side, this reality, right? Like people like the metaphor of being in the eggshell, you know, where everything, you don't see colors and you break out of your shell and everything's in color all of a sudden, whatever. Use whatever metaphor you want. They call it people who are nearsighted and can't see the other side. Normal people. So when one experiences ultimate reality, is everyone's experience different? You know, if Mary Sue and Billy Bob and Fred see ultimate reality, will they all see the same thing? Will they all experience the same thing? And I don't like to use the word see, frankly, because it has a connotation of visual. It's just a kind of, unfortunately, a quick shorthand. You know, so it's really experience, right? So whenever you hear see ultimate reality, please think in terms of experience ultimate reality, okay? So if Mary or Bob or Sue experience ultimate reality, will they all be experiencing the same thing? Or is ultimate reality, is something different going on in ultimate reality at 1 o'clock than at 2 o'clock and then Monday versus Wednesday?
While you're in the perception?
But you just gave it away.
What?
Therefore, it's the same experience. It's the same experience for all of them. The karma that got them there may be different.
Yeah, ultimate reality, you can't have a partial experience of ultimate reality, right? It's not possible to experience some of ultimate reality or a little of ultimate reality. You either experience it or you don't. It's either all or nothing. So,
It's a truth.
So
It's the same for everybody.
it's the same for everyone. Ultimate reality is ultimate reality. It wouldn't be ultimate reality if it was different on Monday than it was on Tuesday than it was on Wednesday, right? If the ultimate laws of the universe and the ultimate truths and the ultimate reality somehow changed every few minutes, it wouldn't be very useful, would it?
But it's not your perception of ultimate reality, which is different.
Well, the perception. So is the perception of ultimate reality different than ultimate reality?
Well, is the what I mean
Interesting
is
question.
the experience that one goes through.
Yeah.
Like if I see emptiness directly, and then Hector sees it, and we share our stories, was it the exact same experience?
You wouldn't be able to share the story.
How would you share a story?
That's why there's so many different religions. I think.
They can't frame it in words.
How could you possibly?
I don't know, if we drew our experience.
If you drew a picture of your experience, you're an artist, I understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we're
You had really an excellent color set.
Yeah, I
Really
mean, if I was like, this is how it felt, he'd be like, yeah, I get it. Or would it be like, no, that wasn't what it was like for me at all?
Yeah.
Is there a similarity there, or is it?
I think you would say the lead-in is going to be personal. The events leading up to are going to be personal. But then the communion with ultimate reality, the direct experience of ultimate reality, is exactly the same for an Arya doing it in their first minute as it is for a Buddha. A Buddha is perceiving ultimate reality, the exact same emptiness as Arya in the first moment. See?
I think what said was perfect. That's why there's so many religions. It's just the perfect expression of different.
Well, that because King George couldn't have 6 wives, or whatever.
Idealistic.
Sorry, but yeah, that contributes, I'm sure. Sorry. Sorry, we should say.
No, it's just nice though too to talk about like coming out of the perception and having different experiences, different karmas, different interpretations. Because otherwise, like without that part of the dialogue, I just feel like I tend to teeter into thinking emptiness itself is self-existent, and that's I find also dangerous. And
Yeah.
perhaps inaccurate.
Yeah, like there's this mystical golden glowing orb there, which is there, and if you see the mystical glowing golden orb, that everything changes, right? Or something like that, right?
Yeah.
whatever you want to call that thing. It's really there, from its own side. You just see it, damn it. Yeah. So the lower schools say that there are different degrees of emptiness, but the higher schools say forget it, you either see it or you don't. So, you see, even ultimate reality, within Buddhism, there are different schools saying different things. So which hat are we going to put on, and which school are we going to belong to? We have to get used to belonging to the highest school, Madhyamika Prasangika, right? So, and their position is that it's exactly the same.
Well, along the way of seeing emptiness, you'll have multiple perceptions of emptiness, but they will not be the right. They won't be the full-on direct perception of emptiness.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. When we were talking about the five perfections. Can you experience ultimate reality without the five perfections? Yeah, just talking about it, you're experiencing it. You have an intellectual understanding of it, right? You can have a very deep intellectual understanding. You can have a profound intellectual understanding of it, such that it changed your life. But then when we talk about the direct experience of emptiness, that's a certain specific instance, right?
Sure.
Where we're saying that everyone who has that has exactly the same experience. Does it mean that all the people who perceive emptiness are the same? Like once, let's say 10 people in this room see emptiness this week, experience emptiness this week, does that mean everybody's all of a sudden the same status and the same level and the same kind of being? Well, you're an Arya, yes, but everybody's got a different set of negative karmas that they've got to work through and purify, right? And so that's why we then go through the 10 bodhisattva levels, or the 10 bodhisattva bhumis. When you see emptiness for the first time with bodhicitta in your heart, you've entered the first bodhisattva level. And then you have to work through the 10 bodhisattva bhumis to full enlightenment. So someone on the second bodhisattva bhumi they say outshines someone on the first bodhisattva bhumi. And someone on the third bodhisattva bhumi outshines someone on the second.
You're saying bhumi?
B-H-U-M-I, level, bodhisattva level. So the idea being that someone on the second bodhisattva level has, I want to say, perfected patience, for example. So they've taken one of the perfections and really mastered it and cleaned up their personal afflictions and issues around patience, say. Right? So each bodhisattva bhumi, as you go up the bodhisattva bhumis, you're cleaning up another of the perfections and perfecting another of the perfections and getting very good at another of the perfections, such that it's pretty much done. So you go up the bodhisattva bhumis that way. And when you reach the 10th bodhisattva bhumi, then after that one becomes fully enlightened.
How do you know that you've moved up a level?
Let you know when I get there. I'm not sure that they have a signpost or a benchmark or a chain,
No, they do.
You've passed. Yeah, there's signposts?
Yeah,
Oh,
they have their specific things that happen. You can find charts on it as to exactly what happens as you move up. But what I was saying, you have a lot of meditative realizations into emptiness before you have the direct perception.
Yeah, yeah,
A lot of them.
On the lead-in, yeah.
You have hundreds of them probably before you have the full-on, into the rocket ship.
Well, yeah, that's what he
Light the
said.
fuse.
He was saying this earlier when he talks about how you see for the first time there's no mug there. That seeing that there's no mug there is sort of a conceptual experience or a conceptual acknowledgement of this tiny perception of emptiness.
Don't forget, it's a realization. It's an actual
Right.
it's a non-conceptual realization.
Yeah, I think
Go figure.
Right.
Good place to take a break. So at this point in the text then, Master Shantideva and Gyaltsab in the commentary, they start to get into kind of a pecking order about different ways of thinking about emptiness. Now, so there are a lot of different ideas about emptiness, and a lot of different wrong ideas about emptiness. And so Master Shantideva and Gyaltsab start to say, you guys have all these crazy ideas about emptiness. And here are all the things that emptiness isn't, okay? So just let go of all this and move beyond these crazy wrong ideas, and let's get closer to the correct idea, okay? So then we'll start, after the break, we'll start to go through what Master Shantideva and Gyaltsab call out as crazy emptiness thinking. Please, you're right.
Can I make an announcement?
Yeah, of course.
I just wanted to say on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for teaching.
My pleasure.
Please keep teaching us.
Hope so.
And, accept our offerings.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. So this is for the children. We have the sitter for the children.
Poor kids.
Poor kids, I know. Yeah, doing all right. So please take a short break, and hopefully there are snacks, and then we'll pick up and continue with crazy ideas about emptiness.